Do you remember when Friday nights meant adventure? When the sound of a car horn playing Dixie could make an entire family smile? There was a time when television wasn't sleek or polished, but loud, joyful, and a little bit dangerous. A time when two good old boys from Hazzard County taught us that doing what's right didn't always mean following the rules. The Dukes of Hazzard wasn't just another TV show. It was a celebration of freedom, mischief, and heart. Every jump of the General Lee felt impossible. Every chase scene a promise that the world could still surprise us. For those who grew up with it, the memory still hums like a country guitar, wild, warm, and full of laughter. But behind the yeehaws and slow-motion crashes, there were secrets, accidents, and stories even stranger than the show itself. Let's open that road again. Fact number 12. The General Lee had no working doors. For anyone who grew up in the late 1970s or early 80s, the image of Bo and Luke Duke leaping through the window of a bright orange Dodge Charger is burned into memory. It wasn't a stunt done for show, it was necessity. The General Lee's doors were welded shut, just like a real NASCAR stock car. The Duke boys had no choice but to climb through the window, and over time that move became an emblem of Hazzard County rebellion. Inside the story world, it made perfect sense the General Lee was built for speed and safety, a race car that never compromised. But behind the scenes, the truth was a little messier and more practical. Not every Charger on set had sealed doors. Out of hundreds of cars used during filming, only a few hero cars were completely welded shut for authenticity or close-up shots. Others had functioning doors simply to allow the crew and mechanics to get in and out without spraining an ankle or shattering a hip. Yet whenever the cameras rolled, climbing through the window was law. It just looked cooler. The window entry became as much a part of the show's DNA as the yeehaw cries and the blare of the Dixie horn. And for fans, seeing someone open a door on the General Lee would have been like watching a cowboy wear sneakers. It broke the spell. Still, every now and then accidents happened. In Season 2's Days of Shine and Roses, Luke Duke actually slams a door shut, a blink and you'll miss it blooper that's become legendary among fans. It's the kind of small imperfection that reminds us how unscripted the world of the Dukes of Hazzard really was, a blend of artistry, improvisation, and chaos. Fact number 11. The stunts were extremely dangerous. Behind the fun, the show carried a darker truth. The stunts, the jumps, crashes, and endless slow-motion chases were very real. Each leap of the General Lee came with risk, and those risks didn't always end in laughter. Dozens of Chargers were wrecked in filming, each sacrificed for one glorious airborne shot. The show's team of stunt drivers were among the best in Hollywood, but even the best weren't invincible. Harnesses broke, cars flipped, engines caught fire. In an era before CGI, every wreck you saw on screen was performed by a human being sitting behind the wheel, trusting his instincts and a thin roll cage. Some injuries were minor sprains, bruises, concussions. Others were more serious. In 1980, tragedy struck when a camera assistant named Rodney Mitchell was killed after his truck lost control during a muddy chase scene. It was a moment that cast a long shadow over the crew, a reminder that every yeehaw came at a price. But that was the nature of filmmaking in that era. Real cars, real people, and very real danger. The crashes looked authentic because they were. When those orange Chargers flew through barns or over creeks, gravity wasn't kind, and most of the cars never drove again. Today, the show is remembered for its humor charm and the warm chemistry between its cast. But beneath the laughter lies a legacy of grit and risk-taking. Every smashed bumper, every airborne leap was powered by human courage. The General Lee didn't just fly. It carried with it the hopes and sometimes the pain of the crew who made those flights possible. Fact number 10. The General Lee got more fan mail than the cast. By 1981, the Dukes of Hazzard was a certified cultural phenomenon. Families gathered around their televisions every Friday night to watch Bo and Luke race through Hazzard County, outwitting the law and defying gravity. Yet the show's biggest star wasn't human, it was a car. The General Lee, with its blazing orange paint, Confederate flag on the roof, and horn that played Dixie, became one of the most recognizable vehicles in TV history. Children idolized it, adults admired it, and the fan mail proved it. Of the roughly 60,000 letters the studio received each month, more than half were addressed not to John Schneider or Tom Wopat, but to the car itself. Letters arrived from around the world. Kids asked for photos of the General Lee. Mechanics wanted to know its engine specs. Fans even wrote emotional notes thanking the car for always landing safely. To Warner Brothers, this wasn't just affection, it was marketing gold. They launched a mountain of merchandise, die-cast models, lunchboxes, posters, and toy chargers that played the Dixie horn at the press of a button. The General Lee transcended the screen. It was a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and unfiltered joy. While the actors portrayed characters, the car embodied the dream, the idea that anyone could outrun their problems if they just hit the gas hard enough. Even decades later, the General Lee continues to inspire a devoted following. It's rare for an inanimate object to steal the spotlight, but in the Dukes of Hazzard, the car wasn't just a prop. It was family. Fact number 9. The surviving cars are worth a fortune. During production, more than 300 Dodge Chargers met their end, performing stunts for the Dukes of Hazzard. Each one was repainted orange, fitted with the signature 01 decals, and launched over ramps, bridges, barns, and fences. Most didn't survive the landings. Today, those that did are worth more than most people's homes. Experts estimate that only 17 to 20 authentic screen-used General Lees remain. Each carries a piece of television history and a hefty price tag. Depending on condition and provenance, a verified car can fetch upwards of $250,000. Some have sold for even more. In 2008, actor John Schneider, who played Bo Duke, sold one of his replica Generals for $230,000. It wasn't even used on screen, just owned by one of the Dukes themselves. And in 2012, golfer Bubba Watson bought Lee 1, the first General Lee ever built for the pilot episode, for $110,000. It now rests in a climate-controlled garage, more museum piece than muscle car. The irony isn't lost on fans once the show's most disposable item has become its most valuable relic. What began as a beat-up Dodge Charger transformed into a six-figure collectible, a piece of Americana too precious to risk another jump. There's a quiet poetry in that. The cars once sacrificed for entertainment now rest as artifacts, proof of an era when television was bold enough to send 3,000 pounds of metal soaring through the air just to make an audience cheer. Fact number 8. Boss Hogg was a real-life genius. Every great hero needs a villain. And the Dukes of Hazzard had one of the most delightfully over-the-top villains ever put on television. Jefferson Davis, Boss Hogg, the white-suited, cigar-smoking symbol of Southern corruption. But behind that cartoonish laugh and larger-than-life presence was a man of extraordinary intellect, Sorrel Book. Off-screen Book was nothing like the blustering county commissioner he played. He was a scholar, a linguist, and a decorated war veteran. Valedictorian of his high school, he entered Columbia University at 16 and graduated by 19, long before most people had figured out their majors. From there, he earned a Master of Fine Arts from Yale and later served as a counterintelligence officer during the Korean War. He was fluent in 6 languages: English, French, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and Italian, and dabbled in several others for fun. When he stepped into the role of Boss Hogg, Book treated it like a thesis in performance. He studied real Southern politicians, including Senators Sam Ervin and Strom Thurmond, to craft that syrupy accent and pompous swagger. To make his character physically memorable, he wore layers of padding that expanded his waistline to over 5 feet around. Beneath that exaggerated costume was a man who approached comedy with precision and artistry. Book's colleagues adored him. Between takes, he quoted Shakespeare, discussed history, and cracked gentle jokes that made everyone laugh. After the show ended, he transitioned to voice acting, lending his talent to Captain Planet Scooby-Doo and Bonkers. He even conducted the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. When he passed away in 1994, he left behind a legacy that proved something profound: genius doesn't always wear a lab coat. Sometimes it wears a white suit and a wicked grin. Fact number 7. The forgotten movie that started it all. Before there was The Dukes of Hazzard, there was Moonrunners, a gritty, low-budget 1975 film written and directed by Guy Waldron, the man who would go on to create the series. It was here that the DNA of Hazzard County first took shape. The film followed two cousins, Grady and Bobby Lee Hagg, as they smuggled moonshine for their Uncle Jesse in rural Georgia. If that sounds familiar, it should. Moonrunners featured the same core characters, the same outlaw charm, and even the same narrator, Waylon Jennings. The tone, however, was darker. There was violence, loss, and real danger. Uncle Jesse dies in the film. The cousins use explosive arrows to destroy a moonshine factory. The humor is there, but it's edged with grit and consequence. When Waldron adapted his story for television, CBS wanted something lighter, more family-friendly, more colorful, and less tragic. He reimagined Moonrunners as a comedic action series, replacing death and despair with freeze-frame endings and laughter. The Hagg cousins became Bo and Luke Duke. The Chevrolet Traveler became the Dodge Charger General Lee. What was once an indie drama became a global pop culture phenomenon. Even so, the soul of Moonrunners remained alive within the Dukes of Hazzard. The wide southern landscapes, the rebellious spirit, the laughter in the face of authority, all of it was born in that forgotten film. In a way, the Dukes of Hazzard wasn't a brand new story. It was a second chance, a brighter version of a tale that began in the shadows. Fact number 6. The theme song was a real chart hit. Few television themes have ever captured the spirit of a show as perfectly as Good Ol' Boys. Written and performed by country legend Waylon Jennings, the song wasn't just a catchy intro, it was the soul of the Dukes of Hazzard. Each episode opened with that unmistakable guitar twang and Jennings's gravelly voice narrating over shots of the General Lee flying through the air. Just the good old boys, never meanin' no harm. The song became more than a theme. It became an anthem for working-class America, for anyone who ever felt like an underdog. In 1980, it hit number 1 on Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart and climbed to number 21 on the mainstream Hot 100, an almost unheard-of crossover for a TV theme. Waylon Jennings wasn't just the voice behind the music, he was also the show's narrator, affectionately known as the balladeer. His smooth storytelling between scenes gave the Dukes of Hazzard its warmth and humor. He was the invisible friend who guided viewers through the chaos, making sure that every crash chase and clever escape still felt human. Decades later, the song continues to live on. It has been covered by artists like Travis Tritt, Shooter Jennings, Waylon's son, and even Willie Nelson in the 2005 film adaptation. The melody has echoed at car shows, country festivals, and nostalgic reunions across the U.S. For many, hearing that familiar intro is like opening a window to the past, a reminder of Friday night's popcorn and a television glow that felt safe and simple. Good Ol' Boys wasn't just a song. It was a promise that no matter how wild the ride got, the Duke boys would always come home in one piece. Fact number 5. The original cast rejected the 2005 movie. In 2005, Hollywood decided to bring the Dukes of Hazzard to the big screen. The studio expected a nostalgic celebration of the beloved show, but what they got was something else entirely. When John Schneider, Tom Wopat, and Catherine Bach, the original Bo, Luke, and Daisy, read the script, they were appalled. The humor was crude, the tone disrespectful, and the heart of the story completely gone. It wasn't the warm, mischievous family adventure they'd built together. It was a caricature. Schneider and Wopat declined the cameo offers. Bach, too, said no. And Ben Jones, who played the lovable mechanic Cooter, went further. He publicly boycotted the film, calling it sleazy and an insult to fans. His statement captured what many longtime viewers felt the movie had missed the point. Instead of celebrating the spirit of small-town adventure, the reboot leaned into stereotypes and cheap laughs. What had once been good-natured fun was turned into mockery. The cast's refusal to participate wasn't about ego, it was about protecting something sacred. Even now, the 2005 film remains a cautionary tale in Hollywood nostalgia. You can't fake sincerity, and you can't recreate lightning in a bottle. The magic of the Dukes of Hazzard came not from flashy effects or modern irony, but from heart, from people who loved what they were making. And the original cast understood that better than anyone. Fact number 4. A contract dispute nearly destroyed the show. At the height of the Dukes of Hazzard's popularity, it seemed unstoppable. The ratings were soaring, merchandise was flying off the shelves, and Bo and Luke Duke had become national heroes. But behind the cheerful smiles and slow-motion car jumps, a storm was brewing that nearly ended it all. Actors John Schneider and Tom Wopat were the faces of the franchise, appearing on everything from lunchboxes to toy cars. Yet when the checks arrived, they discovered they weren't getting a fair share of the profits. Warner Brothers was earning millions from merchandise sales, while the two men who made those products valuable were being left behind. In 1982, they took a stand. Schneider and Wopat walked off the set, refusing to film until the issue was resolved. It was one of the boldest moves in television history, two stars going head-to-head with a major studio at the peak of their fame. CBS's response was drastic. The network quickly replaced them with two new Dukes cousins, Coy and Vance, played by Byron Cherry and Christopher Mayer. The show continued, but the chemistry didn't. Ratings nosedived. Fans flooded the studio with complaints. Children sent letters begging for the real Dukes to come back. After months of negotiations, the dispute was settled, and Bo and Luke roared back into Hazzard County like conquering heroes. Coy and Vance vanished without explanation, as if they'd never existed. It was television amnesia, swift and merciless. In hindsight, the walkout became a symbol of integrity. Schneider and Wopat weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for fairness in an industry that often forgot its people. They risked everything, and in true Duke fashion, they won. Fact number 3. The animated Dukes were pure Saturday chaos. When the Dukes of Hazzard became a hit, Hanna-Barbera saw an opportunity. If kids loved the live-action show, why not turn it into a Saturday morning cartoon? Thus, in 1983, The Dukes was born, a colorful animated spin-off that took the family-friendly mischief global. In this version, the Dukes entered an international car race to save their family farm from foreclosure. The competition took them from the United States to Europe, Asia, and beyond, with Boss Hogg and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane chasing them every step of the way. It was absurd, imaginative, and wonderfully ridiculous. Each episode opened with Uncle Jesse reading a letter to his pet raccoon, Smokey, who served as the show's unlikely sidekick and narrator. The animation recycled sound effects and chase music from Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones, and the cars seemed to defy gravity, launching over cliffs, oceans, and pyramids. But the biggest twist came from real life. Because Schneider and Wopat were still locked in their contract dispute, their animated counterparts were replaced by the backup Dukes, Coy and Vance. For the first season, kids tuned in to see the wrong cousins animated in glorious color. When Bo and Luke returned to the live-action show, the cartoon followed suit. Coy and Vance disappeared, and the originals were suddenly back. No explanation, no farewell, just another Hazzard-style reset. The Dukes only lasted 20 episodes, but it captured a moment in time when even the simplest story could become a global adventure. It was part nostalgia, part madness, and 100% pure fun. Fact number 2. The two-wheel driving trick only worked one way. Among all the wild stunts on the Dukes of Hazzard, one move stood out: the two-wheel ski drive. The General Lee, balancing on its side, racing down the highway like a mechanical acrobat, became one of the show's most jaw-dropping sights. But behind that magic was a fascinating limitation: it could only be done one way. The reason: a man named Buzz Bundy, known in Hollywood as the king of two-wheel stunts, Bundy was the one who performed nearly all of those incredible maneuvers. He had a gift, or perhaps a curse, for driving a 3,000-pound car on edge at full speed. But like being left or right-handed, he could only ski a car on the driver's side. Whenever a script called for the General Lee to tilt the other way, directors simply changed the angle of the scene or flipped the camera shot. Buzz performed hundreds of these feats not just for the Dukes of Hazzard, but for Knight Rider, The Fall Guy, and countless films. In an era before digital rigging or CGI, these moments were entirely real, raw demonstrations of precision, instinct, and nerve. The ski stunts became a trademark of the show, a blend of reckless beauty and technical mastery. Every tilt, every screech of tires reminded viewers that danger and artistry could coexist, that even chaos had choreography. Buzz Bundy passed away in 2020, but his legacy remains immortal in reruns, a silent salute to a man who made steel dance. Fact number 1. The secret Smallville reunion. In 2006, nearly 3 decades after the Dukes of Hazzard first premiered, two familiar faces appeared together again, not in Hazzard County, but on the CW's Smallville. The episode, titled Exposed, featured Tom Wopat as Senator Jack Jennings and John Schneider, now famous to a new generation as Jonathan Kent, Superman's adoptive father. The reunion was subtle but deeply nostalgic. In one scene, the two men ride in a 1968 Dodge Charger RT blue instead of orange, but unmistakably a nod to the General Lee. Fans noticed instantly. The car, the chemistry, even the glint of recognition in their smiles. It was like stepping back into Friday nights from the early 80s. Wopat's character name, Jack Jennings, was no coincidence either. It was a tribute to Waylon Jennings, the balladeer himself, whose voice had once narrated the Duke's adventures. The episode played out like a quiet love letter to the show that made both men legends. There were no horns blaring Dixie, no slow-motion jumps, no moonshine jokes, just two old friends sharing the screen once more. But for longtime fans, it was enough. It was closure, nostalgia, and a wink to those who never forgot where it all began. That episode wasn't just television, it was memory made visible. Two good old boys, a car, and a moment that said some stories never really end. So what made the Dukes of Hazzard so unforgettable? Maybe it was the roar of the General Lee, the laughter that followed every jump, or the way Bo, Luke, and Daisy reminded us that family courage and good humor could outlast anything, even crooked sheriffs and crashing chargers. Beneath the action and country twang was a show about freedom, loyalty, and the unshakable belief that doing what's right doesn't always mean playing by the rules. Even decades later, its charm still lingers. The songs, the stunts, the smiles, they belong to a time when television was bold, messy, and full of heart. Maybe that's why we still smile every time we hear that familiar horn echo across memory. What about you? What moment from the Dukes of Hazzard still makes you grin, laugh, or tear up a little? Share your favorite memory in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and for keeping these stories alive. If you enjoyed this ride through Hazzard County, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more journeys through television's golden past. See you in the next video. This is TV Time Capsule.